My ex-wife, Melissa, who cheated on me and walked out on our family years ago, just showed up at my doorstep with another man's kid in tow. She had the nerve to say she wanted to be a family again. I didn't say a word, just slammed the door right in her face. Let me give you some background. Melissa's 35 now, and I'm 36. We first met when I was about 23. We were both working at the same company back then. That's how it all started. After dating for 2 years, we tied the knot. Within the next 4 years, we had 2 daughters. One's 8 now, the other's 6. That second pregnancy? It caught us by surprise. Melissa wasn't thrilled about it, but she chose not to end it, even after I told her I'd support her either way. I didn't want her to go through something she didn't feel right about. When our first daughter was born, things were still going strong between us. We were as in love as ever. But after she got pregnant again, everything shifted. She got real moody, short-tempered, and would snap at me or our older daughter for no good reason. I tried to chalk it up to hormones or just stress, and I made my peace with the new version of Melissa, hoping it was temporary. But things didn't get better, they just kept getting worse. My daughter and I ended up tiptoeing around her, always careful not to set her off. Even though Melissa was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom, I ended up doing just about everything. After our first kid was born, she quit her job on her own and took care of the house and our daughter while I worked. That was the plan, until she got pregnant again. When she was expecting our second daughter, she said she was too exhausted to keep up with the house and the kids, so we brought in a housekeeper. Honestly, we couldn't really afford it at the time, but I went along with it because I didn't want to add more pressure on her while she was pregnant. I figured after the baby was born, Melissa would get back into her role, taking care of the home and the girls during the day. And just to be clear, I wasn't the kind of husband who came home from work and did nothing. I helped out as much as I could, even when I was dead tired from my job. Once our younger daughter was born, I thought it'd take a few months for Melissa to bounce back and for things to return to normal. But months passed, and nothing changed. She stayed just as irritable and barely lifted a finger around the house. Most days, she just laid on the couch watching TV. She didn't play with the kids, didn't help with meals or cleaning. She even paid the neighbor now and then to take the kids to the park instead of going herself. Now, I'm not trying to sound bitter, but yeah, I was. I was killing myself at work, and she couldn't even do the basics at home. On top of it, we were paying a housekeeper to handle all the cooking, cleaning, and everything else. It was bleeding our finances dry. I had bills, responsibilities, and wanted to start saving for our daughter's future, but Melissa wasn't helping with anything. About 5 months after our second was born, I realized I couldn't keep going like this. I knew it'd be a tough conversation, so I asked my parents to babysit for the day. They agreed. That day, I sat Melissa down and told her I understood she was worn out from the pregnancies, but I needed her help. I explained we couldn't afford to keep the housekeeper full-time and that she'd said she'd go back to doing at least some chores once things settled. I suggested we scale back on the housekeeper's hours and save some money. But she shut that idea down immediately, said she was too busy watching the kids to do any housework and told me I should be making more money instead of blaming her for our money problems. I tried to tell her I was already doing everything I could, but we both had to make an effort if we wanted our marriage to work. I also mentioned that I knew she wasn't really looking after the girls like she claimed. Most days, she just had them sitting beside her while she binged reality TV for hours. That part came up because the housekeeper once casually mentioned it. Turns out, bringing that up was a big mistake. Melissa blew up and accused me of spying on her. She went off on me, said she was done being pushed around, tired of doing all the work, while I supposedly sat behind a desk all day doing nothing. Then she told me it was my fault we couldn't afford help, and that I should be ashamed of begging her to do her part since I was the man of the house. Her arguments didn't make much sense. She was just reaching, trying to make it seem like she wasn't doing anything wrong. She made it sound like I was crazy for thinking she should actually help out. The fight got ugly. She called me a loser who didn't deserve someone like her, and I shot back that she was lazy and already failing as a mom. Our older daughter was clearly afraid of her, and now she was failing as a wife, too. That hit a nerve. She shoved me, hard. I lost my footing, fell backward onto the coffee table, and smashed through the glass. I had to be taken to the ER. Melissa cried the whole time, apologizing again and again. Luckily, I only hurt my back, just surface-level injuries. But I realized then that I couldn't trust her anymore. I told her she had to move out. I didn't feel safe with her around the kids. I didn't know when she might snap again. I had my parents take care of the girls while Melissa stayed at home for a few more days. She kept insisting it wouldn't happen again, but I couldn't take that risk. I almost filed for divorce right then, but she begged me to give her another chance. After a lot of back and forth, we agreed she'd move in with her parents and start therapy. I told her the only way she could come back was if a doctor gave her a clean bill of mental health. Clearly, something was wrong. Happy people don't act like that. But she said she wanted to get better, and for the sake of our daughters, I figured we'd give it one more shot. We also started marriage counseling, even while living apart. But in the end, it didn't matter, because she cheated on me. While Melissa was staying with her parents, my folks moved in to help me with the kids. Melissa and I still went to counseling every week, and for a while, it looked like things were heading in the right direction. I stayed in touch with her therapist, who said she'd been diagnosed with postpartum depression but was showing signs of improvement. One of the symptoms had been serious anger issues, which she never had before. Things had gone too far, though. When she shoved me, that was the wake-up call for both of us. We stayed in this back-and-forth pattern for nearly a year. About halfway through, I even let her come visit the girls, as long as I was around to supervise. Slowly, she started acting more like her old self. I had hope again. It finally felt like maybe, just maybe, we could make it work. But then out of nowhere, she stopped coming to our sessions. No explanation, no warning. She ghosted me completely. Even then, her therapist kept me in the loop and said she was still making progress, but Melissa had clearly moved on. From us. It didn't make sense. For weeks, I kept trying to get through to her, but Melissa kept brushing me off, saying she needed space. After nearly 3 months of her dodging me and blowing off our counseling sessions, I decided I'd had enough. I drove over to her parents' house. I'd avoided going there before because her folks never liked me. They always thought I was the reason she'd lost her mind and started acting the way she did. Melissa had told me straight up that me showing up there would only stir up drama we didn't need. But with how she'd been acting lately, I had no choice. She was distant, skipping therapy, and whenever she did show up, it was like she didn't care. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Every time I called, texted, or tried talking to her face-to-face, she'd just say everything was fine. But I could tell something was off. She was hiding something. I felt it in my gut. So, I went to her parents' place, expecting to see her there. But she wasn't home. When I asked her mom and dad where she was, they said they couldn't tell me, and then slammed the door in my face. They didn't even try to hide how satisfied they looked doing it. I got this sick feeling in my chest, and I decided to call her right then and there. I stood outside their house, calling her over and over. She didn't answer. The longer I stood there, the worse the feeling got. So I made a stupid decision. I tried to sneak into the backyard. I knew from before that the kitchen door was usually left unlocked, but I didn't need to go far. When I reached the backyard, there she was, Melissa, sitting on the swing her parents kept back there. And she wasn't alone. She had her back to me, but I could see her kissing some guy I didn't recognize. That image burned into my memory. It was one of the worst moments of my life. I still can't forget it, no matter how much time has passed. The guy saw me first and pulled back quick. By the time Melissa turned around, I was already walking back to my car. She chased after me, tried to say something, I don't even know what. I was too shocked to process anything. She reached out to grab my arm, and I told her not to touch me. She didn't. I got in my car and drove away. The minute I got home, I blocked her from everything, calls, messages, everything. I told my parents what had happened and asked them to help me find a divorce lawyer. After that, I didn't see Melissa again until we had to meet with a court-appointed mediator for our divorce settlement. By then, I was running on autopilot. I was numb. I was only functioning for the sake of my daughters. Emotionally, I was checked out. Even when I found out Melissa was giving up her parental rights, I didn't feel anything. She decided she didn't want to be part of our lives anymore. She wanted to be with the guy I saw her kissing, let's call him Travis. Turns out, Travis was some old friend from her childhood. They lost touch after high school, but when Melissa moved back in with her parents, they reconnected. She claimed she fell in love with him. Her parents were all for it, too. Looking back, it makes sense why they were okay with her making out with him right in their backyard, even though she was still married and had 2 kids. They always wanted her to end up with Travis. They said she was finally choosing herself and her happiness, as if she'd ever done anything but that. The divorce process dragged on. Even though she cheated on me, Melissa still tried to go after alimony. But my lawyer and I fought back hard. We made sure she didn't get a dime. I'd been the one footing all the bills for years while she sat around watching trash TV. Everything we had was earned by me, and she wasn't getting a piece of it. It's been 5 years since the divorce was finalized, and we came out of it with her walking away empty-handed. Those divorce months were some of the toughest days of my life. But I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. I had my daughters to take care of. They only had me. My parents were a godsend during that time. They stepped in wherever they could. I'll never be able to thank them enough for being there, for helping me balance work and raising 2 kids. Now, looking back, I can honestly say I'm grateful the divorce happened. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing that could have happened to me. But if it hadn't gone down that way, I wouldn't be where I am today. Life's treated me pretty well since then. I'm doing better in every way, financially, emotionally, as a dad. We've moved into a bigger home now. My job pays more, and I don't have to worry about spending money on anyone but myself and my daughters. My parents live close by, still help out, and drop in often. I've got good friends, and my girls and we're happy. And that's really all a man can ask for. I thank the universe every day that things turned around for us. Well, they were going great, until Melissa showed up again just a few days ago. The kids were at school. I was about to leave for work when the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there she was. Melissa, standing there with a little boy beside her. He couldn't have been older than 2 or 3. I knew right away he had to be her son. I stood there, trying to make sense of it all, and she started crying. Told me she was sorry. Said she wanted to fix things and be a family again. Said she was finally ready to give our marriage another shot. I couldn't believe it. After all these years, after everything she'd done, she really thought she could just show up and decide we were going to be a family again? Like it was her call to make? Right then and there, I made my choice. I told her this wasn't her family anymore. I stopped being her husband the moment she cheated on me with Travis. The divorce, well, that was just paperwork. And she gave up her rights as a mother when she signed away custody. After I said that, I shut the door. Told her to get off my property. I wanted to scream at her, but I held back for the boy's sake. I didn't want to scar some kid who didn't ask for any of this. I could hear her sobbing on the other side of the door for a couple minutes, but I didn't open it again. Once I was sure she'd left, I headed to work like nothing happened. I tried hard not to dwell on it. I knew if I gave it too much thought, I'd start to break. And I couldn't afford to do that not again. I almost managed to forget about the whole thing. But as soon as I got home that evening, my phone rang. It was my parents. They were furious, demanding to know why I'd turned Melissa away. Turns out, after I shut her out, she ran to them crying. And they weren't just sympathetic, they were involved. They admitted they were the ones who gave her my new address. Told her where I lived, told her what to say. Apparently, she'd reached out to them a month ago, and they'd been helping her plan this whole thing. My parents said she was leaving Travis, and that this was her big chance to come back and make things right. They genuinely believed it was time for me to let her back in, for the sake of our daughters. They said my girls needed their mother, that no one could replace Melissa. I was furious. I told them it wasn't their call to make. They had no right to decide to forgive her for me. No right to invite her back into my life behind my back. And definitely no right to give her another shot, without even asking if I was okay with it. Things could have gone really bad if my kids had been home when all this happened. It was reckless, plain and simple, for my parents to pull a stunt like that without telling me. I called them out on it, but they wouldn't admit they'd done anything wrong. Their defense? That they helped raise my kids during the divorce and still pitch in now and then. They said whether I wanted Melissa back or not was my call, but they had just as much say in what was best for my daughters. I thought that was ridiculous. Those girls are my kids, not theirs. I respect my parents, and I'll always be grateful for how they stepped up when things were falling apart, but they had no right bringing Melissa back into my life without asking me. We argued. Things got heated. They told me I was the one being selfish, saying I was holding on to the past and not giving Melissa a second chance. They said they'd looked into it, and they were convinced she'd changed, that she deserved to be part of the girls' lives again, even after I reminded them she'd signed away her parental rights. They were offended that I'd even suggest they'd put my kids, or me, in harm's way. They said I was destroying lives just because I was too proud to accept that maybe my daughters needed their mother back. It's been a few days since then, and after thinking it through, I still don't believe I was out of line. I've gone over it again and again. Am I really the bad guy for not giving Melissa a second shot at being a mom? Update 1. It's been about a week since Melissa showed up with that little boy, and I just found out the truth about what's been going on between her and my parents. Honestly, it's so disturbing I barely know how to talk about it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Turns out, the betrayal ran deeper than I thought. My parents didn't just give Melissa my address. They'd been in touch with her this whole time. While I had cut her off completely after the divorce, they kept the door open, saying they believed she'd come around eventually. They didn't talk often, maybe once a month, but even that felt like too much. I felt completely betrayed. According to them, after I filed for divorce, Melissa told them what was going on. Travis, the guy she left me for, had forced her to make a choice: either cut ties with her old life, including her kids, and start fresh with him, or fight to stay in her daughter's lives and lose him. He gave her an ultimatum. My parents said it was a hard decision for her, but in the end, she picked Travis. She chose to build a new family with him instead of sticking with the one she already had. Melissa reached out to my parents shortly after I filed. She told them she wanted to stay in touch with her daughters, but privately. She said she felt trapped. She told them I was pushing for full custody with only supervised visits, while Travis demanded she abandon her daughters altogether. Even if she'd chosen to fight, her odds of winning weren't good. The circumstances around our divorce and her history of anger issues would have worked against her. My parents said she knew she might end up losing both her daughters and Travis if she tried, so she gave up and signed away her rights. But she didn't give up on staying in their lives entirely. That's where my parents came in. She begged them to let her see the girls in secret, to be the bridge between them. She knew that once her rights were gone, she'd have no legal way to see them. But my parents would still have that access, and they agreed to help her. They played along, fooling me for years. Every time I dropped the kids off at their place, they invited Melissa over. They let her spend time with our daughters without ever saying a word to me. Why? Because they said her story moved them. They believed a mother shouldn't be kept from her kids. Apparently, betraying their own son didn't bother them half as much as the thought of Melissa being cut off. They even told me they bribed the girls with toys and candy to keep them quiet. That's why I never suspected anything. Whenever I asked the girls what they'd done at Grandma and Grandpa's, they'd say they played games with Grandma's friend. I figured they meant one of my parents' neighbors or old friends I already knew. Turns out that's exactly what my parents told them to say in case I asked. It hurt to find out my daughters had been lying to me, but I don't blame them. They're just kids. They were manipulated and scared into keeping secrets. When I finally confronted them and asked if they'd been seeing their mom behind my back, they broke down crying. They told me they didn't say anything because they thought God would punish them. That crushed me. Melissa and my parents had drilled that into their heads, made them believe there'd be consequences if they told me the truth. It explained why they were always so vague when I asked. I also felt like the world's worst dad. I never once asked who those friends were. It could have been anyone. Someone dangerous, for all I knew. And I would have had no clue. But that ends now. I'm getting a restraining order against all of them. I'm done. Thankfully, I've got written proof. After our blow-up, my parents emailed me a few days later, laying it all out. They thought the email would help me see how desperate Melissa was to stay in her daughters' lives, how she was only trying to keep her connection to them without losing the man she claimed to love. But all it did was prove how deep this betrayal ran, and how far they were willing to go behind my back. They probably thought their big reveal would make me forgive them. But all it really did was make one thing crystal clear. Every single one of them, Melissa, my parents, they were all lying to me, and I can't trust a damn soul anymore. Funny how Melissa gave up her rights as a mother, and then had to sneak around just to see her own kids, like she was doing something illegal. All because Travis, the so-called love of her life, didn't want her to have anything to do with the family she'd left behind. And now look at them, they're getting divorced, too. So what was it all for? They even had a son together. But from what my parents told me, Travis is done with both of them. He got a job offer somewhere far away and plans to move in a couple months. Melissa recently started working again, and their son just started kindergarten around here. She didn't want to pack up and leave with Travis. That's what caused all the fighting between them. Things blew up 3 months ago when Travis told her flat out he was leaving. Said he was done trying to play family man. Said sacrificing his dreams to make her happy wasn't worth it anymore. They told me all that, hoping I'd feel sorry for her. But honestly, it felt like karma. Justice, even. I've already talked to my lawyer. The petition for restraining orders has been filed. I also sat down with my daughters and told them the truth, told them that from now on, they won't be seeing their grandparents or their mother again. They seemed okay with it. Still, I know this isn't going to be easy on them. It hasn't been easy for a long time. So we're starting therapy together. I want them to have a space to talk it all out, to process it in a healthy way. This ends here. No more secrets. No more lies. No more people walking all over us. Update 2. Hey folks. Thanks so much to everyone who's reached out. The support has meant a lot, especially the kind words and prayers for my daughters. Really, thank you. Melissa and my parents have been served their restraining orders. They're all supposed to appear in court in a few days. I don't know how they feel about any of this, and frankly, I don't care. I blocked them from everything: phone, email, social media. I've told my friends not to give them any info if they reach out. I've also beefed up the security at home. Been working from home for a few days now just to be safe. I spoke to my daughter's school, explained the situation, and made it clear that no one but me is allowed to pick them up. At first, I thought about keeping them home, but I didn't want their education to suffer just because Melissa and my parents can't be trusted. Their teachers are keeping an eye on them, and I feel confident they're safe. So far, so good. And once the restraining order is finalized, I'm hoping they stay away for good. Update 3. Just a quick update. We got the restraining order. All 3 of them, Melissa and both my parents, are legally required to stay away from me and my daughters for the next 5 years. If they don't, they'll face serious consequences. I'm still keeping the security measures in place, just in case. Last time I saw them, they were furious, and I'm not taking any chances. My daughters and I are going to family counseling regularly, and I truly believe we're on the right path. We've already made a lot of progress, and I'm hopeful for the future. Right now, all I care about is their happiness. That's it. Thanks for sticking around and listening to my story. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss more true life stories just like this one.